Welcome, as I say, to the NAV People Knowledge Hour, where we attempt to deal with some subjects in Dynamics NAV and give you a flavour for what can be done and what is available. I'm Michael Boyle, one of the consultants, usually a consultant in manufacturing, but as you know, manufacturing and warehouse are fairly closely intertwined in any case. So I'm going to be taking a session today, and what I want to do really with that is to just guide you through some of the setup and some of the choices that we might have and show you one or two of the things in processing that we can do in terms of warehouse activities. So I'm just going to take you through that. As I say, it is down for an hour, but we may not need all of that time. We shall see. I'm also recording this session as well, so that if anybody wants that and wants to go back through any of the things that I've said, or wants to use it for themselves, or indeed invite other people to see that, then you are more than welcome to do just that. So yeah, that's me and what the purpose of today is. So first of all, I'm going to go through some of the setup on Dynamics NAV for the warehouse and show you some of the choices, and then we will show you some of the processes that might be employed in that. If you do have questions, then great, that's fine. I'll try and deal with those if I possibly can, but as it is a sort of remote session, you'll understand sometimes that I may not actually be looking at what you're asking me, so do bear with me. But if you do have questions during, I will do my best. Also, if you have questions afterwards, then by all means email me or another member of the NAV people, and we will do best to answer anything that you may have. So introductions then out of the way. So what I'm using today is the standard landing page role center for shipping and receiving. But in this one, the warehouse management system, shipping and receiving, there is another one which deals with the more simple models of the warehouse. So the first thing that we want to look at really is some location setup and some of the choices that we have there. So if I do that and look at my reference data and look at my locations, I've got a number of them on there. So we have a choice when we're setting up locations, which are warehouses as far as NAV is concerned, as to how we're doing them. So the simplest, for example, if I look at the blue one, here we have the header information. We are not using warehouse receipts or shipments. We're not requiring people to put into a bin, so we can ship straight out of a sales order, receive straight out of a purchase order, and we're just seeing the location as a pool of stuff that we can receive and ship out of and keep it as simple as possible. That suits some organizations pretty well, and some people also use the shelf number on the item card as an indicator of where something might be, but it's no more sophisticated than that. That suits some people, but with others we need something a little bit more controlled than that. If I look at other warehouse models that there is, here we have, is that the right one I'm looking at? Probably not. No, bear with me. Silver is what I meant to go on. But here we have a little bit of control. So again, we're not so worried about receive and shipments, but we are putting the things away. We are requiring a bin to be used, and we are requiring a pick instruction. So we actually go and generate a separate warehouse instructions to bring items through to go and get them out of our inventory and onto the customer. But we are not controlling through shipments, and we're not enforcing a lot of disciplines in there. So that's like a sort of halfway house, if you like. So that's another choice that we have. And that's for sort of medium-sized companies, maybe all that is required, or a smallish location where it's relatively easy to find and know where our inventory is. And that's another model. What I'm going to talk about today, though, is the warehouse managed solution in Dynamics NAV, where we are directed to where things might be, and the system is also going to tell us where is the best place to put things, and we can organize our warehousing in terms of different activities that might be involved. So let's have a look at that and see the kind of things that we have set up in the Kronos White location. So here we are, same sort of header, but this time you will see that we have ticked directed put away and pick. So NAV is going to come and tell us when we receive something, we are going to do it on a warehouse receipt, not straight off a purchase order, an inventory item that is. And it's going to force us to put it in a bin, and similarly when we pick and get stuff out on a shipment, we will do it on a warehouse shipment for a sales order or maybe a transfer somewhere else, but we are going to be told where it is, and we are going to be told how we need to get that, and we will have specific instructions created by the system. So that's the sort of policies, if you like, of the location on that card. And if I now show you some of the other things that we're talking about here, we have organized bins for sort of specific purposes here. So we have a receipt bin code, so goods in, a warehouse receipt comes in, the default bin is going to suggest that it comes in on posting a receipt is that one. And that means it comes in and it is our stock, but we're going to create a put away instruction which will then move it from goods in to either bulk storage or a pick face if that's what we choose that we need to do. On the other side we've got the shipping bin, so the shipment area. We have a default shipment bin. We can have more than one, but we must have at least one default there that is shown by the location. And we've also got the cross dock, which is about moving things when we are waiting for things that need to go out directly on the shipment. A cross dock bin is also an area we can divert material to. So we have bins for specific purposes, and this is how we assign those on the location card. Just to mention, we've got production as well, so we've got shop floor bins that link our warehouse to the production system. Specific work centres can also be linked to specific bins as well in NAV 2016, but I don't intend to particularly go through that today. The adjustment bin is a virtual bin, and all that is for, it's not really a place where items exists for any length of time, because our link between warehouse entries and inventory. So if we receive, or if we physically count and we have an increase in a bin, and so there's more items in, or we take some out and we've got fewer items in there, then the other side of that warehouse adjustment that takes place, whatever type it is, goes to the adjustment bin code. And until inventory catches up, which if we're posting a warehouse receipt or posting a warehouse shipment is straight away, but in terms of a warehouse inventory journal where we're adjusting stock, like a physical inventory stock count, then we have to post the inventory transaction afterwards. So until we've done that, there will be a quantity in there. But once that is adjusted, then that will have gone away. But so there we are, the bins and what they're used for. Then we have another tab here, which is something we need to be aware of. We have the idea of special equipment, so we can set up special equipment within our warehouse if we want to. So certain Certain areas such as high shelving may need a forklift truck, or it means some other kind of equipment. So that sort of directs or acts as filters to direct our particular activities. And are we going to specify that special equipment that is needed by the kind of bin it is, which is the usual way of doing it, or are we going to do it according to characteristics of the type of item that we're handling? So we've got some policies there that we can do. And then again, also the bin capacity. Obviously, bins have physical constraints on them. Sometimes in NAV, we don't bother about enforcing those constraints. But if we do have weight or volumetric constraints, then are we going to prohibit using that, overfilling the bin to its maximum constraints or not? It's not about replenishment of particular bins. This is more about whether that bin should be used if it's already full of stuff or not. So that's how that kind of works. All right. The other thing to notice about the location setup, and I promise you I'll move away from setup a little bit later, so don't worry, is that the location is organized in terms of bins, of course, as we've talked about, but also zones, and that's important. In a simple warehouse, zones isn't a concept that's used, but in our warehouse here, for the white warehouse, we do have a number of zones that we can use. So we have, for example, as we've already talked about, the receiving zone, and we have a shipping zone as well. So that's how that works. And we have other zones like production and picking, the pick face areas, with a specific purpose. So each zone will have a bin type. Now what you'll notice is a bin type will allow you to do certain things and disallow other things. If I look at pick, for example, a common type of bin, and I look into the bin type code, what can we do? We can't receive directly into it, but we can put away. So after a receipt has been posted, then a put away instruction can use this kind of bin, and we can pick from it. We can't ship and we can't receive. If we want to receive or ship, we have to use those bin types down here. And you can, of course, this is just Kronos setup. You can call these things what you like, but generally speaking, this kind of nomenclature tends to work for people. So that's the bin type. And a zone will normally have a collection of bins, usually of the same type. Doesn't mean they all have to be, but that's the default that we'll get past if we create a bin in a zone. So if I look at the bins within that zone, then these will normally be of a particular type, and they've been set up and belong. So bins belong to particular zones. So in that way, in terms of receiving zone, there we are. We have just a few of them there, as well as the one that's defaulted on the location card that we saw earlier on here. Okay, so that's the way that the warehouse is sort of subdivided, and you can have few subdivisions or you can have many. I mean, you will need a ship zone, you will need a receiving zone, you will need a pick face or a put pick type zone for picking, and you will probably need a QC. You may not need many more than that. So when you're drawing out your warehouse structure, think about what particular areas of a warehouse are being used for, and that should inform the kind of zones that you will set up. Okay, so that's for zones. Are we okay on that so far? Good. Right, let's now talk about how we get receipts put away correctly into the warehouse. There are different ways of approaching this, and certain items will have different characteristics, and so may be directed to be put away in a slightly different way from main items. But we must have at least one template which determines how we find where to put something when it comes into inventory. So if I look at the standard template, which is our default, if we don't change it on the item card, this field also exists on the item card and the stock keeper unit for that matter as well. So here we are. How do we read this? Left to right and from top to bottom. So we have a number of rules which we try and look for the specific or most optimum rule first, and then if that fails we go on to the next one. So the first thing we do is, if we have a put away to create, we try to look at a bin that's been marked in bin contents as fixed for that item. So we try to find that. So we try to find the item with that fixed bin. And we also, because we can have different units of measure supported by the warehouse management system, we try to find that bin content, that fixed bin for that particular item for the unit of measure that we are dealing with. So it is unit of measure specific. And if we've got a fixed bin, then we try to see if it's less than the minimum quantity we've defined on that bin. So that's quite important as well. So by default we will fill up the pick faces, and then we go on to put things into bulk storage. Of course we could take the opposite view and say, well, actually we're not going to put away to the pick faces at all. We're just going to put away to our bulk storage and then ensure good rotation by replenishing the pick faces from existing stock within bulk storage. That's the other view, and many people will take that view also. But anyway, in terms of a standard template, that's the rule we're going to try first. If that works, jolly good, we're happy. If that doesn't work, we have pretty much the same criteria with units of measure and the item and whether it's fixed. But if we can't find a bin with less than the minimum quantity, we'll find any bin that's fixed within our pick face zones, and we will choose one of those. So that's the next rule it's going to try. Well, okay, if we can't find the fixed bin where an item normally lives, then we are going to find a bin that has got that item with that unit of measure and use that. Again, less specific rule now. So we've tried the other two, we're now trying that one. If that doesn't work, then we'll find a bin that's had the same item. Maybe it's not the same unit of measure. If that doesn't work, we've got another one that says, right, okay, find me a bin that at least is empty, so I'm not mixing stock unnecessarily. So try and find me an empty bin. And if all else fails, well, just give me a bin that I could allowed to put away inventory into. So, top to bottom, left to right, let's try these rules out, and that's how we've defined it. So that's how we determine how we're going to set the rules for putting away things into inventory. Of course, we have other templates that says, okay, for this particular item, really I only want to put it into fixed bins. I'm not interested in putting it other ways. I mean, that's fine. We can have it simple like that. Probably the criteria I would think about if I was going to use that is if that results in a put away instruction not finding an appropriate bin to put an item into, then we have to question whether that's the right rule. So beware of those slightly simpler. But yes, if we have a group of items that really they only live in 2 or 3 bins in the warehouse, then fine, let's do that. We can set those policies for those items in such a way. But for the standard template, it's probably advisable to go through one which is always going to find us somewhere to put the item if it possibly can. So there we are. We've also got a flag here that if we're using a more restrictive set of rules, and if it can't satisfy, we can also create a put away line that has failed to find a proper bin, and then we've got to make a decision. Normally people don't like that because they interface the warehouse with handheld devices, either using mobile nav perhaps, or if not using Tasklet, or some other way of delivering warehouse instructions to handhelds, and we certainly don't want blank bin instructions put away instructions to be related to warehouse users. So use that flag sparingly, but at least when we are just using NAV and not sort of handheld screens, or we're testing things out, then that is a flag that we can actually use. So I hope that's sort of given you a flavour of how the location card setup is done, and gone through some of those concepts for you. Okay, what I'm now going to do is look at a particular item and how that might be set up in terms of warehouse and what we can do. So if I go back to here and look at my items now, so bear with me as the screen sort of catches up with me here, and let's look at the rim. Okay, it's a purchase part. It doesn't really matter whether it's a purchase part or not. The warehouse, treats items in pretty much the same kind of way. And we have a warehouse tab and also a navigate and a warehouse section to actually look at what's going on. So we'll look at those in turn now. In terms of the warehouse tab here, if we are physically inventory, if we're using PI or something, when it was last counted, any special equipment we're interested in, if there was a different put away template code, we could say set that here. The fact that it's blank means it's going to use the standard template, and it's also been marked that if we want to send that back out on a particular need for shipments and are awaiting receipts, then we can cross-dock this item because we've got to take there. So there's a few bits of setup in the warehouse on the tab there for it. In terms of seeing what there is in the warehouse, we've got two things here. We've got stock keeping units, so that defines how we treat and plan and cost an item at a place. So if we've got those, we can set those up and look at those here. So if we do have any, that's what it'll show. The other thing it does is if we've got bin content for this item, in other words, we've either dealt with this item in the warehouse before, or we've set up this item to use how it's particularly used in a warehouse, that will also show. So if I show you that now, the bin content for a particular item, we can see that this item in that location has defined in a particular way. We can see we've had that. So I'm just going to bring the zone code in there and the bin type code in there, so you can see the kind of way this has been set up. Might be a bit easier for you to actually see how it's actually behaving. So let's bring those in here. It's probably going to. So in the put pick type bins, because it's in the pick zone, we have a bin where the item has been. We haven't got any quantity at the moment, but the bin content is still there, and we've defined some minimum and maximum quantities for it. Similarly, we've also defined this item to be used in the put away area as a fixed bin, and we have some quantity that it was in, and we've also got some in a different bin that we haven't particularly defined for it, but it's there as well. So this screen serves two purposes. Essentially, it shows where an item might be within the warehouse on an inquiry, for example, and lots of the handheld device type things will actually use that particular information to actually show you where something is. So it does that, but it's also used to define how an item is going to be treated within the location as well. So what I'm going to do is create a purchase order for that item. Okay, so let me do that. So let me find out who the vendor is for that item. There it is. Okay, there's our vendor, custom metals. Okay, let me create a new order here for that. So we'll create a new order for custom metals. There we are now. Here is our purchase order. Type item, of course. And we'll select the rim. Of course, what I should have done is made sure that my location code was the white warehouse. I haven't done that yet. So I'll do that now. Yeah, I'll get the message about that. And I'll put that to the white warehouse and give it a quantity of, what am I going to put in? I'll put in 20 of those. Okay, so we've got a purchase order. Simple as that. Right, we release our purchase order in good old NAV style. So there we are, we've released our purchase order. I've turned off the workflows for this particular discussion, but of course if you had approval workflows for POs, they would kick in at this point also. So what do I need to do with that? I need to create a warehouse receipt. So there's a button in the warehouse bit of the ribbon for that. Because it's a warehouse managed, we must go through and create a warehouse receipt to bring it into stock. That controls the activities around that. So creating my warehouse receipt, push the button, it tells me that I've got a warehouse receipt created. So that's the first stage in bringing an item into stock. So helpfully when I do that, I do it that way. It shows it to you. Of course, if we're in the main role center, we can create a warehouse receipt and then get hold of a request. So there's two ways, and bringing in more than one PO purchase order for a particular vendor inside one warehouse receipt, or even multiple vendors if we have loads coming in from several places. There's many ways we can use the warehouse receipt, but I'll just do it this way because it shows it reasonably well. So we've got a quantity to receive. Notice that what we don't have is concepts, and of course if it was cross-stocking we can show that there as well. But anyway, we've got our warehouse receipt. When I post this receipt here, what that's going to do is to bring the items into the receipt warehouse. Okay, so that's the first stage of bringing something into our particular warehouse. What it won't do is put it away automatically. Some people have programmed NAV so that the put away is created and then registered, or at least registered all at the same time automatically. But standard NAV doesn't do that. It's going to create a warehouse. It's going to post a warehouse receipt. It will create the put away instruction according to the rules, but then that will be a warehouse activity for somebody to do. Simple reason is because you might decide not to put it in the standard place where it's told you. You might want to, for whatever particular operational reason, do something else with it. So we post our receipt and off it goes. Of course we could have altered the quantities or whatever else, but we post our receipt. It's posting the lines, there we go, and off it then goes, and we can see the results of that in a moment. Just bear with me while my screen actually catches up with my talking, and it tells me when I've posted and it's created me a put away instruction. Marvellous, that's exactly what I wanted it to do, and they are there, they're sitting there to be done. So let's close off a few of those particular screens, because as is usual I tend to open far too many, and go back to my home screen now. So let me see, there should be a put away. It will be that last one, always is the last one. Let me just do it this way, and as a separate way it's going to show you put away. That will normally be done by somebody else than the one who's actually receiving the goods. It isn't always, but often is. Okay, so here we are. There are two lines. There may be more than two lines, but in this case, a simple put away will usually just have 2 lines. So what's it's telling us? There's the rem, there's the item. A take line, so we take something out of the current bin, which in this case is the standard receive bin in that zone. There it is. So we have a quantity and we're putting it in this case it's saying, oh yes, I've got a pick zone and that's where it must be. And you know, that's where it's supposed to have been, you know, so if we look at the bins and the contents here, you know, yeah, we have got less, you know, we've got less than the minimum quantity and so on in there. So, you know, we have got, oh no, that was the wrong one, I beg your pardon, I'll show you this one, the proper one. We have got this item defined in that bin. I've also got another item defined in that bin. Doesn't matter, we can mix our items in a bin, that's fine. But if we can see here, well actually, you know, my minimum quantity is 10 and, you know, I haven't got any, so I'm obviously below that. So it has found that bin according to that rule. What I'm going to do is not put it there. Okay, I'm going to decide that I'm going to change it and I'm actually going to put it into my storage zone instead. And, you know, my storage zone, well, there's an empty place for it, that's fine, I'm going to put it in there. So I'm actually going to put it away elsewhere from where the system told me. That's unusual, but you know, maybe for operational reasons we decide to do that in a slightly different way. So let's register that put away. We use the term register, by the way, in warehouse management simply because it is posting of a receipt that has changed inventory value and brought in our stock. The put away instruction doesn't alter inventory value, doesn't write to the general ledger, doesn't change the value of our stock, so we use register instead of post in this context. Okay, so there we are, we post in here, so we'll register in here, and because we're fully doing our put away, that actually then changes and goes away with us. So if we look at our item now, again, you know, stock, the inventory has now gone, our inventory will have gone up. Yes, there's an inventory gone up a bit. We can see also if I look at the bin contents and see exactly where it is now. After having done that, we can see that, again, we still haven't got any in our put pick. But we've got 20 in this bin number 6 because that's what we decided we would do, and we've got 18 elsewhere which we had before. So actually that is no longer in the receipt area, it's now at least in our warehouse. Okay, so essentially that is the inbound cycle, getting items on purchase or from production or from transfers from other places into our main inventory warehouse and making sure they are put into an appropriate bin or place of storage. So that's grand. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to create a sales order for the RIN because I'm going to sell it as a spare. So let's do that. Bring us back to our role center where we are. So sales orders, here we are. These are all our sales orders. Let's just create a new one here. Okay. Good old, somebody's been playing with his database. I beg your pardon. Let's try again. Currency table has changed. Marvelous. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out altogether. I do apologise for that, but somebody has uploaded something. So let me just go back in. Hopefully that will have gone away by the time I restarted NAV. Somebody's obviously uploaded an object or something in here that I wasn't aware of. Okay, back into sales orders. And here we are. Create ourselves a new one. And we will sell to the Canon Group. Good thing they never pay their bills, so we get a little bit of stuff about credit. I'm going to sell them a rim. And again, I've done exactly the same that I shouldn't have done. I'm going to sell it out of the white location because I want to create a pick for this. Yeah, I'm going to change my location here. Of course, the locations default from company information setup, or they default from a responsibility center, or they default from the customer or vendor card that you're dealing with. So in normal running, you shouldn't have to be changing locations. It's just that this is a general testing type of database. So that's the kind of thing that happens. So I'll sell them to rims. Okay. So we have that. For some reason I haven't got any financials in there, but if I do, then I can stick in something if I don't have a pricing set up in that way. Okay, so there we are. That's our sales order. Release it as we must, and then again, in order to get it out of the warehouse, we create a warehouse shipment instead of a warehouse receipt. So it's a similar sort of process in reverse, getting stuff out of your inventory and to customers or to other places. We're transferring to another NAV location and we had a transfer order, create a warehouse shipment, exactly the same. So anyway, we create that and it has created me a warehouse shipment. And here it is. Looks much like a receipt, but the source document is a sales order. It has a quantity of 2 on it. So what does it do? We need to create the pick instruction to make sure we get this out of our warehouse. That's on this ribbon here, create pick, and then that will create an instruction for it. So yes, you have a choice of whether you want to default the quantities coming from the source document onto the pick, or whether you're going to get handhelds, for example, to fill in what they've actually managed to pick instead. Up to you. I tend to put through the quantities through to the pick instruction. I think that's easier, but people have different views on it. Now, it says nothing to handle. That is because for that particular item, if we go into the item here, and we look again at the warehouse, so we go here into our bin contents, we have none in a put pick area. There is a bin for it, but we have no quantity at all in that. So if we haven't in our location setup, so I'll show you that now as also. So if I go back into here and look in warehouse, admin and locations, yes, I could have got to it easier, I'm sure, and look into that in here. If I look in the location, if you remember earlier on, we decided that we weren't always creating a pick line and we weren't always creating a put away line. So the rules have been broken. We haven't got any in the pick phase, not available, not been got there yet. So we can't create the pick instruction. If I tick that and then run it again, it would actually work. Let's do that. It would create me a blank place and it would actually go through. However, there are other ways of making sure that the pick face is actually replenished. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that thing for the moment. What I'm going to do instead is if I go here back to my role center, I'm going to make sure that my pick face is filled before I'm going to do it. So what we do is that we've got worksheets for this. A number of worksheets that we've got. So let's look at, we have worksheets for picks where we want to pick multiple sales orders at a time, for example. And we've got worksheets for putaways if we want to use that method. But in this case, we're going to use a worksheet to move things that should have been moved from bulk into pick because of our minimum contents requirements. It's not really MRP, but it's really reorganization within the warehouse. So we've got a calculate bin replenishment function here. So what we do is that we run that, and for every bin in the pick face that says, okay, I'm below my minimum that I've defined for a particular item, and I've got some somewhere else, I'm going to create myself a suggestion to move it from bulk into there. So let's do that. And we can filter it by item if we're just interested in. Let's do that because we don't really want to create requirements for all kind of things. So for that item, I know I've got a movement. I've got to find out where it is and find out what I need to do. Quite a lot of people, by the way, automate this. So they put the process report, which is actually what this is, onto a job queue, and they run the job queue every hour or every day or whatever, and make sure that the movement activities are auto-calculated. And then they run another function to go and actually create the movements as activities. So they can do that two-step process automatically. That's something that is quite often done, but isn't in this case. So we found that we have 18 in a bulk place, and we've got another 20 in another bulk place, and it's suggesting that we move these to our pick face because if you remember that we're below our minimum quantity and we didn't have any left. That's why it's done that. So once we create the movement, with the item bin contents, remember we have our pick face. We didn't have any quantity, but we had here a maximum quantity, but we also had a minimum quantity of 10 that we should have in that bin. We're below that quite clearly, so it's going to try and move what it can find into that for us. So here we are, we've got two places where it is, create a movement. So we'll do that, create a movement. Again, I'm going to ignore that. And it tells me that I've got a movement activity. Clears the lines. So let's do the movement. A movement is just like an internal instruction. There is no sales order behind it. There's nothing like that. So we'll go back to our role center and we should have a movement sat there waiting, number 8, waiting for us to do. Okay. So here we are. We're taking out of bulk and into pick. We've got 4 lines this time because we're coming from 2 different places. So we're coming from bulk in 15 and bulk in 6, and we're placing into the pick zone number 2, which we had defined as our fixed for that particular item. So it looks like a pick or a warehouse activity and can be registered in much the same way as the others, and will come up in sort of tasklet type handhelds in much the same way also. So we register that, off it goes. And we've moved them, and that movement activity is now gone. Okay, so let us go back to our Oops. No, it's not the right place. Why it wasn't? Okay, because I had to go back in, that's right. So let's go back to my role center. I should have warehouse shipments. Here we are, we need our 2. We haven't created our pick yet. This time I'm going to create my pick. That's what we wanted to do before, but we were prevented, if you remember. This time it has created a pick because it's found it in a pickable area. So here we are. We can then, actually we can go from here. Yes, well, I could go back through the activities, and I perhaps should, but let's just go through here because it can show where we are. So again, we found them in the pick, and we're going to move them to our shipping zone this time, and provided whoever goes off, he or she goes off and finds them in good order and does that, then they're registered with pick, which has got a little box symbol up here. So register our pick, off it goes, and this time what it has done, which is why I wanted to show you, it has now popped the quantity to ship according to the quantity we've picked into the document. So it's actually it's actually updated the shipping document with what we can ship, because it's actually there and ready to load on to UPS or our own transport or whatever method we've got set up for doing it. So here, because it's not a warehouse document as such anymore and will increase or decrease stock, or decrease stock in this case, this is post, the other one was register. So we have the possibility of ship, or indeed if we invoice at the same time, which is increasingly what's done, we have both possibilities in our warehouse shipment because we've picked that now. So off it goes. And when we've hit the post button, again, my screen is waiting a little bit, but off it goes, and creating the invoice and so on and so forth, and everything should be as it should. So I've gone through, just to summarize, I have gone through some of the setup that was required according to locations to make sure we got a warehouse managed location set up. I've shown you some of the more simple ones, but didn't actually process any of those. I've talked about zones. I've talked about zones as being areas within a warehouse for a particular purpose, like a shipping area, or goods in, or QC, or bulk storage, or a pick face, whatever. So I've talked about those. I've talked about bins having particular types. So a particular type will allow you to do certain things and not do certain things. So a receipt bin type will not allow you to ship. A put away type only will not allow you to pick. A put pick will allow you to do both picking and putting away. I've also talked about the rules for defining the rules for the warehouse and how we're going to find the right bin for that particular item. I've shown you how to set up the bin content to make sure that a bin and an item is defined together in the bin content as to where it can be. I've talked about minimum and maximum quantities, and we have shown then the purchase order for an item, a RIM in this case, creating a warehouse receipt, posting that receipt, which in turn creates the put away. The put away is then using the template rules to go and find it an appropriate bin. I ignored the advice and put it into bulk storage, if you remember. We then did the other side of the thing, so we created a sales order for the same item. We created our warehouse shipment, but because when we created our warehouse shipment, we didn't have any in the pickable area, the pick instruction did not create when we asked it to. So we then looked at the replenishment to create ourselves a movement to move things from one area to another, in this case from bulk storage into pick face. So we did that, we calculated what we had to do, and then we created that movement and registered it. And then finally we went back to the shipment we're able to create a pick instruction, and then we registered that and we were able to ship and invoice the order. So in a sense, I've gone through a very basic run through of all the warehouse processes that we may have in our warehouse managed solution. I hope what I've done in doing that is to show that actually warehouse managed isn't a bad choice. It gives us a lot of control. There are a few more steps, of course, and if you don't need all those steps, or you have a simple business model, maybe you decide not to go down that route, but often people do. But it's not so hard to set up, not so hard to manage, and of course once we've got the processes working and defined and the setup as we want it to be in Dynamics NAV and able to use those screens, then we can talk about using either mobile NAV or Tasklet or some other solution to render those pick instructions, those movements, those putaways, warehouse receipts, warehouse shipments, and so on to those devices on the shop, so that they can be done in real time by those people. So, well, that was what I particularly wanted to say. What I have neglected to do to see if anybody had any questions, but don't think I'm aware any. But if anybody's got any now, then please say. Right. Okay. Oh yeah. Vyacheslav has. So if you want to, nope, it's gone, has he? Okay. Do you want to send me that? No. Okay. Let me see. Where are we? No, can't see. There is a question there. Okay. You're thanking me very much. That's very kind of you indeed. Yeah, you're most welcome. You're most welcome. As you all were. So thanks very much for giving me the time to explain all that to you. Should you have any questions or things like that, I am now going to put my email address on a chat message now. So I'm just sending that now. So there we are. That's my email address if you have got any questions after the fact. So all right, I've got another question. Do you know if NAV 2016 can use ADCS? Yes, there is indeed. You can use ADCS, which is a way of managing handheld devices using, I think it's VT100 emulation on, or Windows CE on devices. Yes, that is possible. If we look at the locations again, I'll show you that in brief terms. When we have the white warehouse, we have the bins, warehouse policies and so on. We have the use ADCS, I beg your pardon, on there, and that defines whether that location is going to use that method of rendering putaways and picks and warehouse instructions to those devices. So that's how that works. I haven't got the setup to be able to exactly show you that, but yes, it can be done. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Brilliant. Well, thanks ever so much indeed for listening and bearing with me while I had to go back into NAV and one or two things like that, but I hope it was useful for you, and by all means get in touch with me afterwards if you want to know any more, or indeed anybody else at the NAV people. Thanks very much for your attendance, and hope to connect with you all soon. Thanks.